Chris has got another commitment tonight.
We have a
No,
call,
it's Monica.
not a bit spent.
Crystal is,
I just saw Timber already walking around, so, but
Okay.
you have more than a quorum, so there's no
all right.
sweat. But
Okay, it is 6 o'clock. My name is Meg Bomke. I'm gonna call the policy committee meeting to order. We have an amended agenda here. Could we please have roll call? For Anderson,
Meg Bonke,
here.
Lori Hayes,
Here.
Jason Graham,
Here.
Tim Baruti,
here.
Monica Gary, Max Kelly,
Here.
Jacob Lane, here, Marcy Parker,
Here.
Robert Schneider,
Here. We got it on email.
Crystal Vanucci,
Here.
Chris Yakubowski, David Brown, Owen, Daryl English, Deborah Fraser, Kevin Marshall, Tim McLaughlin, David Ross, Michelle Schrosser, Joe Stansby. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much.
And Chair, I was just notified that Amy Jackson had a last minute call away, but she will join online. So if people have questions for her about Fred Chance, that she is available online. She just
Okay.
couldn't be here due to emergency.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, could I have approval? Well, let's see, we need to do the Pledge of Allegiance first, I believe. I don't
Yes.
see that on here. Okay. Yep, could everybody please stand if you can?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Check.
All right, could we have approval of the August 21st, 2023 Policy Committee agenda?
Second.
Thank you.
We just asked for you to do the amended agenda, which is.
That is
written
correct.
on the-
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Public involvement. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. All right, do we have anybody here from the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing no one, we will move on to item 5.
Staff has received a written comment, which
Ah.
Becky is going to.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Golden, thank you.
We'll let you time me 3 minutes per comment.
All right,
First is from Jane Leeds. Plan now. I want you to read and review the length of time it takes to establish a meaningful light rail system. Charlotte, the largest city in the state of North Carolina. They've been able to attract many businesses. They are now the largest banking city outside of New York City, and job opportunities due in large part to their transportation system. By contrast, Fredericksburg has little to offer in the way of meaningful and desirable transportation. Not everyone works in DC, which is about the only routinely accessible mass transit route via the VRE. Because VDOT was too short-sighted, they did not build a third rail for it, thus limiting the VRE's effectiveness and access to a point that it leaves its trains and staff sitting in the rail yards at each end of the rush hour rides. Not a good investment of tax dollars and resources. They're planning a third rail at the 11th hour, maybe even too late to be a viable alternative to our mass traffic and travel woes. Many cities like San Diego, California, have started their light rail system without federal funding or grants. See the link below. Spotsylvania County and nearby cities have too long given sweetheart deals to builders and developers by not requiring them to invest in the area's success. They do not require commercial or residential developers to put in contiguous sidewalks, making local transit accessible to all citizens, not just the disabled. Provide a meaningful infrastructure to connect their projects to existing business and/or transportation. None of our state or local laws require developers of transit and transportation sites to provide contiguous sidewalks, audible signals, or other meaningful infrastructure to allow the disabled community to have the same access. They build parking lots for transit riders with vehicles, but little or nothing to give those who cannot drive or afford a vehicle to give them equal access. Funding is not the issue, as most public officials would have us believe or accept. It is a matter of priorities and good, or rather better, use of the resources we have. Every major city has proven the fact that there are simply too many single rider cars on the road. The days of driving alone are over. Those who feel entitled to that need are needlessly clogging our highways and byways because our elected representatives are too short-sighted and entrenched into just doing what they have always done and know how to do: pour concrete, build bridges and ramps. With the coming of autonomous vehicles, the problem will simply escalate. Autonomous drivers of light rail system, autonomous drivers of light rail systems, trains, and other mass transit vehicles need to be our focus and future.
Stop.
We have another one here from Gordon K. FAMPO. I've been following the very well-known Western Crossing study that feel that the necessity of the well as completion of eastern side of should not be overlooked. FAMPO has carefully considered west from Lafayette Boulevard and the need for alternatives to, particularly in case of accidents, as well as the future work to be done on the Falmouth Bridge. The following are problem areas which can be mitigated by the construction connecting Route 17 in Spotsylvania and Route 3 in Stafford, as well as the Eastern Bypass. Number 1, east-west traffic, Fredericksburg. It should not be a surprise that the majority of traffic from New Coast to Route 1 at the Blue Gray Bridge consists of vehicles whose final destination is I-95 North. In the morning, the almost never-ending stream of rush hour cars traveling west go either A, north over the bridge to Route 3 and end up on Route 17, or B, continuing on Route 3 to I-95 is staggering and promptly recreated every evening in reverse direction. While plans are under study for much on this route, a bridge between Route 17 and Route 3, as shown on the attached sketch, would eliminate much of the rush hour traffic in both directions and take some pressure off of the through traffic on Route 3 west toward Orange, etc. 2, Butler Road and Route 17, Stafford. The continuation of the Eastern Bypass to exit 136 would take much of the pressure off of Butler Road and Route 17, particularly at rush hours. 3, north-south traffic. At rush hours and weekends, and when there is an accident on I-95, all northbound traffic slows to a crawl on I-95, Route 1, Lafayette Boulevard, and Route 17. Such a bridge with the connection with exit 136 would give another alternative for traffic to avoid these routes and also lessen the traffic on Lafayette Boulevard. Number 4, Route 218 in Stafford. This route is heavily traveled, particularly at rush hour, for workers at Dahlgren, and the Eastern Bypass would also do traffic on Route 3 and Butler Road. Number 5, exit 136 in Stafford. It should be remembered that when the federal government agreed to add this, it was part of the planned Outer Beltway, which was turned down by the boards of supervisors in both Stafford and Spotsylvania many years ago. We need to fulfill the utility of this. Number 6, Falmouth Bridge over Route 1. The recent 2-year construction of the Chatham Bridge causes increase in traffic on both Falmouth and the Blue Gray Bridge. When the future reconstruction of the Falmouth Bridge begins, it is doubtful.
Time.
That's it, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Becky. Okay, with that, we will move on to the, well, actually, on these comments, could you please make sure that the board receives emails of these comments?
Yes,
So they are attached to the agenda that was emailed out to you, I believe.
yes.
So if
The
you,
link and
if you
public
click-
involvement.
if you click
Okay,
on the
so
link,
it's already there.
if you click on
Okay,
the link on the
perfect.
agenda that was emailed to you at home, it'll open those pages with
Okay,
those links.
wonderful, thank you. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Consent agenda submitted.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please cast your vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item Transportation Improvement Program, also known as our TIP amendments and modifications.
These are the late items, Madam.
That is correct. So we did have some changes come in from VDOT at the last minute. They weren't at the last minute because of VDOT, because of a clog down in the Richmond system of VDOT. So it wasn't our local residency's problem, if you will. So even though they came in late, they are important. And unless anybody has some real consternation, I don't see things that are, there's no reason not to approve them unless the board sees so fit. So,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
on 6B, we do need to, we would like, Spotsylvania would like to separate the river crossing NEPA study for a separate vote.
absolutely not a problem. So we'll call that 6C. How's that?
Okay.
All right. So first we have resolution 24-02.
2402.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Resolution 24-01.
I'll move 2401.
Second.
Taking out the river crossing, which will be item C.
Okay, and that is UPC 123-908, just to be specific, okay? Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Okay, now we have 6C, which is the river crossing.
No, it doesn't need a new resolution. It just needs a separate vote.
All right, I'll move approval of UPC change to UPC 1233908.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Nay.
Okay, we have two nays. Spotsylvania. All right, moving right along to Ian's administrator report. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought, as it's the first meeting of our new financial year, that I would just update you on the position with congestion, traffic, transit, and population growth in the region, because there have been some interesting changes which have come through. So we've done more work than usual. We're going to look at the travel demand model, which we'll get some information about later, travel patterns in the region, and population growth. This is just a quick infomercial, really. We're now deep in of rebuilding the FAMPO travel demand model. It's now, legislation has been approved now to require that this model be updated every 5 years instead of every 7 years. So we're doing it now. We're working with the VDOT central office and a consultant that they have employed to do this. It's really, remember, the travel demand model for the FAMPO region is owned by VDOT. It's no longer owned by FAMPO. I believe you all sold it to VDOT some years back. So VDOT now owns it, and we assist with the update, and all of our jurisdictions and our state partners, the transit agencies, all share their data with VDOT, and they then rebuild this. We're doing it now. We're including the very latest National Household Travel Survey data, which have come out in the last, it's been given to VDOT in the last month. Becky is going to give you a short update on that soon. The base year for the model will now be FY22, or actually calendar 22, I think, and the outer year will be 2050. So it is quite an update. What's happening with the traffic? I always show you this every 6 months or so. This is the volume of traffic on the roads in the Fredericksburg region, right? We started doing this for you before COVID, and you can see that was the big dip. That was COVID. This was the big snowstorm. And there's always a Christmas drop in freight traffic, which you can see on the graph. However, if you look at the orange line, which you can see over here, we've broken through the level of congestion we had before COVID. We're higher than that level now with automobiles. The truck traffic has been higher than that for quite some time. The last 2 years, it's been about 11% higher than the pre-COVID levels. It's not abating. This is the December, January dip. Trucks don't drive over the Christmas week, so there's always a dip every year. But the truck traffic is still between 11 and 13% above COVID levels, but the automobile traffic is now crossed over. So basically, the congestion now, statistically, in our region, is starting to get a little bit worse than it was before COVID. We've passed that threshold. OmniRide, unfortunately, I don't have only the local OmniRide routes separated out from the total. So this is all OmniRide commuter buses. And you'll see this for all I've done it for all the transit agencies. The dark blue line represents 2019 before COVID. The light blue line represents after COVID. This dip here was the strike. So we can't expect the figures during the strike to have been as high as normal. But the overall commuter buses in OmniRide are now at roughly that level compared to the pre-COVID level. It is increasing. If you look at the years, the orange is 2020, the silver gray is 2021 and 2022. It's on an upward trend. Every year it's getting better than the year before, which is what we're seeing with all the transit agencies. VRE, I think you know this, some of you are on the VRE board as well. The dark blue again is 2019 before COVID. The light blue is 2023, which is kind of what we call after COVID. But you can see that every year since COVID, VRE has been going up. So even though it's nowhere near the pre-COVID level, it's quite a steep climb that is happening at VRE. And if you want to see that in a more simplistic graph, that's the trend line, right? It dropped down to 2021, which was the lowest VRE ridership. And now it's on an incline. And if you look at this graph, you can see 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023, same as OmniRide, every year it's increasing, but there's still a way to go before it gets to the pre-COVID level. This is Fred Transit's map. Fred is a bit of an outlier in that they have already reached the pre-COVID ridership levels. If you look at the dark blue and the light blue, some months it's just below, some months here, for example, in September, Fred Transit's ridership was higher than it was before COVID. And that pattern, you know, it continues. You can see here it's a little bit less, here it's a little bit more, here it's roughly equal. So you can see, depending on which month, Fred has started to reach, in at least half the months of the year, higher ridership levels than before COVID, but they did move to a fare-free level. So that has obviously helped raise the Fred ridership because you no longer have to pay. That's just a simplified graph showing you there's the before COVID ridership. Here's the ridership as of the 30th of June 2023. You've got it there. So it has now crossed that level, and you're now seeing more riders on Fred Transit than you did before COVID. This is Amtrak.
Wait, Ian.
Yes, ma'am.
Back to the Fred Transit, please.
Yes.
Where, if you dug down into the data, where are we seeing the greatest increase with the Fred ridership? Is that Spotsy, the city staffer?
That I can't answer. Is Jamie online yet? Jamie, can you hear us?
Okay, we can maybe come back.
Don't know the answer, but I will find it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Ian, this is Jamie, Madam Chair. Overall, it would be the city with the most ridership increases because we have the most service in the city of Fredericksburg, but there have been proportional increases among all the jurisdictions. So if you're just looking at number of riders, it would be the city, but again, the city has the most service, but it is a proportional increase amongst all jurisdictions. All jurisdictions are seeing those increases in ridership. If you look at proportion of service overall, I believe it's Spotsylvania County has the greatest percentage increase if you're comparing service availability versus ridership.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions for Jamie while we have her?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Lori.
So I know the last time we had some information on, the transit, we had asked if you could drill down to per stop or route to give us more information on that. Is that available yet?
We do have that information, depending on the route. So if you want it for your particular jurisdiction, we're happy to provide it. The only thing that we provided your representatives at the planning level is that it's not validated, which basically means with the FTA, it's not 100% statistically correct. And that would just be if an operator didn't press a button or we went to paper, and there may have been a couple of passengers missed. So that can be provided, but it's not FTA, Federal Transit Administration, valid.
So, and the detail of that is per route, not per stop then, right? We wouldn't know what the most popular stops are.
You could get basically insight into that. However, let's say there was a full load at a particular stop, the operator may have counted it on the next stop, so you wouldn't see it at the particular stop where it was actually valid yet. So at the route level, your numbers are spot on, but at the stop level, there can be some variance.
Okay, thank you. And that is provided to our planning departments then?
When they've asked us for that information, we have provided it, yes.
Okay, I will ask Spotsylvania to get that from you then. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? So Jamie, if I heard you correctly, this is Meg, you said that if you have 10 riders at one particular stop, that they don't really count them until the next stop. Is that what I understood?
No, that's so what I was given an example of an issue that may occur that makes the ridership at the stop level not 100% valid. So for example, the Federal Transit Administration, when they validate your data, you have to go through a specific methodology. So overall, we get it right most of the time. But there could be a day where an operator went to paper and you may not see that in the physical data. And then we have to make a manual change to that. So my explanation is more on how the process goes to make it Federal Transit Administration valid. Not that you're not providing good data, or if you look at the top stops, you can glean that information. But if you see a number that may be off a little bit for a particular day or a particular time period, that's where it kind of gets into the technicalities for how the feds basically say that our stop level data is actually 100% or statistically significant as far as accuracy. So does that happen? Once in a while, but that is not the norm. So I don't want you to get the picture of, hey, they're not counting all their passengers per trip. But that's kind of the difference between valid data versus non-valid data on how the FTA requires you to analyze it.
Okay, I got it. And then, so let me ask Bob Schneider, since he's sitting here, do you all have a similar situation like that with OmniRide?
Yeah, we have ours a little more refined because we have CAT AVL, which is computer assisted dispatching and automated vehicle locator. So driver presses a button, beep, we know we're there. So it's just the technology investment. But even then, we have our issues with, you don't care about this. Section 15 reporting, let's put it this way. It's National Transit Database of the Bureau of Transportation Statistics inside the Federal Transit Administration and the Department of Transportation. It's so in the weeds, it hurts. But the key is we track our fares, we know where our riders are, and you want route level data anyway, you don't want stop level data.
Okay,
Route level data gives you the information on the corridor. Stop is granular for, quite frankly, where you're going to put a shelter, right? Or where you might have high congestion, layover, but that's operational and we adjust that. That's the in the weeds stuff. It's what is the route level performance, because that tells you what the volume of people moving through the corridor can deliver. And quite frankly, they often transfer to something else.
Agreed.
awesome. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Ian, continue, please.
This is,
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
wait,
I'm sorry, one more
Sorry.
question, I apologize. So we're currently on fare free.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
and that is through, is that a grant that?
It's federal
okay.
grant, but it is time limited. Jamie has more information, but I believe it's a 3 to 4 year program of fare free, and then it would revert back to either localities or Fred making up the difference, or otherwise you would have to revert back to a fare paid again per ride.
And when will that grant run out?
Jamie'd have to answer the date. I don't know.
February 2025. However, we are actually going to begin those discussions starting with our Public Transit Advisory Board, where all the jurisdictions have members. And then that will ultimately escalate to, I'll say, Board of Supervisors, City Council level to make a final decision, since those fares supplement the local match. So February 2025 is the answer, but we will be having those discussions with the localities.
So we could then assume that we're probably going to be looking at increasing a subsidy from the county pretty soon,
Or charging a ticket price.
or charging a ticket price. Okay. All right.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Amtrak. You can see the big crash during COVID of their ridership in Virginia. And this is, we've included the three main routes of Amtrak that affect us. We've excluded the Roanoke corridor because they don't come through here. But these are the routes to Richmond, Newport News, and Norfolk. Those are the three sets of trains that come past here.
Yes, Jason.
Thank you. Is this each way? So like, you say Richmond, are these trains only going to Richmond, or is this Amtrak going north as well? Is this the Northeast Corridor route?
So a number of these go down in the morning, and the same train turns around and comes back in the afternoon. So it's bi-directional traffic.
Sure, but are we capturing the
The-
reverse bi-directional?
We're
So like,
capturing tickets down and tickets up, both
okay,
both
okay,
directions. This is the total.
but okay, sorry. Let me rephrase that question. We're getting tickets down to Richmond and coming back from Richmond.
Yes.
Are we getting tickets going up to DC and coming back from DC?
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
The total trips.
Okay, on that same line, like the north.
Total trips on the line on that route. So on the, for example, this on the Richmond route, you'll see for a period it didn't run. After COVID, they shut it down. Then they restarted it. You can see because there was 0 people riding, that's the period that they shut it down. So that's the Richmond route, and it counts the tickets down and the tickets up. And if you only go 3/4 of the way, that still counts as one trip. So it's still counted.
They shut down the Northeast Corridor train line?
No,
Okay.
they shut down the trains that run through Virginia that are supplemented by Virginia. These are Virginia-specific Amtrak trains, but some of them
Okay.
carry on to South Carolina. So we're counting the trips within Virginia only. We're not counting the trips that go further to South Carolina. We count it as one trip, and then it leaves our region and goes further. So those are the three main routes here on this line that goes past our office. The Roanoke one doesn't come past our office, so we're not counting it because it's not in the FAMPO region. So this was the big COVID drop. Since then, it has been going up. And if you look at these numbers, basically by this orange line, we had bounced back to the pre-COVID levels with Amtrak ridership. And then they changed something. They added another round trip to Norfolk and another round trip to Newport News. So we added 2 more trains round trip at this point. So at that point, they reinstated the Richmond route. And at that point, which is July 22, they added another 2 trains. And so we bounced back to pre-COVID levels, and then they added 2 trains, and now we're higher than pre-COVID levels. These are the highest ridership numbers, according to Amtrak, that we've ever had in Virginia on Amtrak currently. That's what's happening here. Population trends. This is important because some changes are happening. Stafford was growing the fastest of any of our jurisdictions by a long way for a significant amount of time. We're going back to 2010. Around about the time COVID hit, suddenly Spotsylvania started growing faster than they had before. More population, more people started moving to Spotsylvania. So did it happen. The same thing happened in Stafford, but it peaked in about the middle of 2021. Stafford has gone back to growing at the level they were growing before COVID, but this additional spurt of growth here has gone back to the original level. It's not quite as pronounced as Spotsy. It looks like the population in Spotsy is continuing to grow faster than it did before COVID. More people, the head count in Spotsylvania is going up at a fast rate. If you look at our smaller jurisdictions, a similar thing is happening. I don't know, it's hard to see on a graph, but there's a point here where King George, Caroline start to grow faster than they did before COVID. I don't know why. All I can tell you is what's happening in the numbers. Fredericksburg looks like the line is all over the place. And we scratched our heads for quite a while to try and work out why that's happening, right? Because it looked like, and I even emailed the staff of Fredericksburg, I said, hey, do you know this? Have you complained to the Census Bureau? But some of our clever staff here have worked out what's going on. You know why the Fredericksburg population fluctuates so much? The university. And unfortunately for us, the Census Bureau, when they do the ACS, the community survey, they don't always count at the same time each year. And so they don't always counted when the students were all at university every year, the graph would be a straight line. If you counted when all the students had gone home for the summer, the graph would be a straight line. But when you count at different times in the year, sometimes you're counting with all the students, sometimes you're counting without the students. So that fluctuation we put down as largely the student population being here or not being here. The city's population is not dropping. It's just that that year when they did the count, how did we check this? Well, the two gentlemen over here went and looked at the figures for all the other big university towns in Virginia. And exactly the same thing is happening in those towns. The Census Bureau is not consistent in either counting always when the university students are there or always when they're not there. They don't always count at the same time. And so university towns' Census Bureau data is not accurate. You cannot compare it. And that's why the Fredericksburg line is all over the place. Sorry that is the case, but I can't tell the Census Bureau what to do. That's just what they do.
And also, if my memory serves me correctly, they were very delayed in a lot of the census information, and we got everything, remember, at the 11th or 12th hour. So
the big takeaway for us is not that anomaly with Fredericksburg. The big takeaway for us is, for some reason, and we can all speculate, but for some reason, round about the time COVID hit, our population growth experienced a spurt. Most of our jurisdictions, if not all of our jurisdictions, had a greater population increase than normal. And that is going to affect traffic and housing, obviously. But just bear that in mind. This is in the data. And we spent a lot of time digging out those numbers and double checking them and arguing with each other about whether this was correct or not. We've done some work.
Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not trying to give people a homework assignment, but my theory on this is that it's because all ex-urban populations experienced large growth after COVID, with people moving away because work from home, getting more space.
I think you're right. People moved out of the metro cities into the suburban areas, and we're one of those suburban areas. But just remember that. And the numbers have not stopped. So they've not gone back to DC. They've not gone back to Richmond.
And as long as work from home is still a thing,
And there was an article recently online showing that in Richmond, their population is skyrocketing. And we think it's because people moved out of DC and looked for somewhere else to live. There it is in the numbers. So we are, and it's not like they've gone back to work and now we don't have the problem. They're staying. So we have a even faster growing population than we had before COVID, which we weren't aware of until recently.
Yes, Mr. Matt.
I'll give you another one on with regards to Richmond, because again, having a millennial son, if you look at the trends going from west to east, there are certain cities that become very popular to the millennials moving. You had Silicon Valley, that became too expensive. Then it moved to Austin. Then they drove the prices in Austin, and Austin went to the roof. And now the new city coming from Austin is now Richmond, and it's just kind of moving. across it until they basically drive all the prices up to Richmond, and then they'll go on to the next. And
Nashville, yeah, Nashville.
Spotsylvania is probably getting the fallout from both Richmond and DC. So Spotsylvania is probably the biggest growth, but the others are still growing at a very fast rate. It's faster than we predicted. We just need to know that. Just an update on the studies. SS4A, there's a thing in your pack today. We're ready to proceed with that. Got everything in place, documentary wise. Next Monday, the GWRC board, we hope, will give authority to us to sign the contract with the contractor and get on with it. We've got the task order. The river crossing pathway is a bigger study, so we're taking a little bit more time. We're working with VDOT to refine the task orders, while the proposal and then the task order. We'll bring it to you next month. But this one we have to get federal approval for. That one is a federal grant, so we've already got the federal approval. This one we've got to get VDOT to apply for federal approval before we're allowed to write checks. So there will be a slight delay in the start of this one, just because of we've got to get it in the tip, we've got to get federal approval. There's a process. Up to complete studies, the final drawings and cost estimates are being sent from the East-West study to our jurisdictions so that you've got them for if you want to apply for taking those further. The VCR trail, bridge and tunnel study, same thing. VDOT is reviewing the final documents to make sure the cost estimates are accurate, etc., etc. So we're in the process of review, but they're both complete. We're about to close out those studies. Future vision. This is what we've been working on in our discussion time over the last 6 months. What is our vision? What are our priorities? We decided that we needed priorities, not just a vision. What do we want to spend money and effort and time on? What are our key projects? And then what is the funding plan? And tonight in your pack, I want to just talk a little bit about what we could do about future funding, because we tackle larger projects, they cost money. The inflation running as high as it is, they cost a lot of money. We want to proceed, we need to raise the funds to be able to work on those, or the jurisdictions need to. You know, however you want to cut the cake is none of my concern, but just how do we get funding we need? Pittsburgh Station renovation, this morning they pulled off the packaging, if you like, and unveiled the first of the new platforms on these. I took these photos on my cell phone, so they're not the greatest, but that's the new platform on the east side of the Fredericksburg train station. The concrete is already laid. They're going to put guardrails and handrails on the side so that you don't fall off and end up in our office. That's the first concrete platform that extends the platform so that the Fredericksburg station can now accommodate longer trains. And you can open multiple doors on the train, which is difficult at present. So that one's done. In the future, in October, we're going to commence a minor review of the LRTP. We're currently working, it's not a FAMPO product, but the rural LRTP, we're just reviewing, seeing where over time new projects have to be added or that kind of thing. And we will likely need to review the CLRP, but more about that in October. We're going to be issuing a call for projects for CMAQ and SDGB. What the TAC is recommending to you, and you'll see that later on in the agenda, is that we do allocations of CMAQ and SDGB every second year. And we do it on the alternate year to Smart Scale. Because if we try and do the CMAQ and SDGB allocations every year, both your jurisdiction staff and the FAMPO staff are going to have to try and run with these dual programs at the same time. And all of them involve complicated projects. It's not just, hey, give me money. It's you've got to have a drawing, you've got to have a cost estimate, you've got to have a whole bunch of documents, and VDOT helps with some of those documents. So between VDOT staff, our staff, and the jurisdiction staff, it's a lot of work. And we are recommending that we do CMAQ and SCGB this year, because next year is going to be the big application for the next round of Smart Scale. And so if we do one the one year and the other one the following year, they can rotate. So every second year, we will be able to hand out more money than 1 year's allocation. We'll hand out 2 years' money worth of allocations, but it'll be in the alternate year to Smart Scale. So you'll get an award Smart Scale this year, and then next year you'll get an award of CMAC and STGB. And so every year there will be something funded, assuming that the new methodology of Smart Scale doesn't leave us high and dry. There'll be funding every year. That's what we're proposing. So we would like to issue a call for projects in September. It's written into the policy, so I'm notifying you, and we would like your nod to continue with that for this year. Work with localities on starting to identify projects for Smart Scale for next year. We have to start the year before. We don't do all the cost estimates and drawings in September, October, but we do need to say it's going to be a bridge or it's going to be a sidewalk or whatever the project. We have to name the project, so we will work with them on that. We are busy with a group of tip updates. We've seen some of them tonight. I believe there's some still outstanding, so next month you'll get a second batch of those. And it's basically taking the projects that you've approved. Once we get from VDOT the tip blocks from central office, we then have to add them to our tip. But there are some other things that are not FAMPO projects. For example, the railway station, we have to add this project I've just shown you photographs of, got to add that to the tip. So any state partners that are doing work in our region where there's new infrastructure, those projects all have to get added to our tip. So you're going to see a bunch more next month. And just finally, the Virginia Governor's Transportation Conference has been set down for October the 18th to the 20th in Crystal City. But that's all we know at this stage, and they're not taking registrations yet. So we'll find out more information. And I think that's the end of my presentation, Madam Chair.
I never knew.
Okay,
It's on the website. I found it.
let's talk about the CMAC and STBG funding in September. And just, is there anybody that's opposed to that? And if VDOT could maybe weigh in on, I'm assuming if Ian's making this recommendation, you guys have discussed this and you're in favor as well.
So it's written into our current policy that every September we will call we will have a call for projects. So it is actually the policy. So
Right,
I don't.
but the fact that we're going to do it every 2 years.
Every second year. That has been written into the draft methodology, which is on your agenda tonight for information only. So you
Okay,
won't vote on it tonight.
all right,
John will walk you through that just now, and you will only need to vote on it next month. So we're just giving it to you now as a preview. So I know that the policy committee doesn't like getting big documents at the last minute to approve. So we're introducing it tonight for information. You can talk to your locality staff to get further information, and then it'll come back next month for a vote.
okay, got it.
So it is on the agenda for tonight.
All right. Any questions for Ian on his report? Okay, seeing none. All right, let's move to item 8, the action items. Resolution 24-1.
Madam Chair, we're recommending BHB as the company to do the Safe Streets for All action plan. It's not a really big contract. It's a smaller contract than some of the other studies. We had bids from both Michael Baker and BHB. We scored them. We believe this is the better of the two for this particular project.
Okay,
And so we don't need your vote because technically the grant was given to GWRC, but I don't do anything without FAMPO. So if you would like to endorse the use of this consultant to do this particular project, we would value that endorsement. But the final vote will be for those of you who are members of the GWRC board. Next Monday, you will actually vote on it. So it's just if the policy committee wishes to endorse this or ask any particular questions, we're here to answer those.
Endorse GWRC resolution 24-1.
there's a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Any discussion?
Matt and Crystal showed today.
I think they can fall asleep down there. I have fulfilled my commitment, my verbal commitment to the policy committee to always get at least 2 bids before we award anything, and we did in this case. We have done as well for the next project, which is the river crossing study. So we are doing what we said we would do. We're not just giving it to one guy. We get bids from 2. We sometimes send them back and refine the 2 bids, and then we score them and vote.
And I appreciate you bringing it to us before the GWRC meeting, and it is good if we have a recommendation. So all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Okay, Transportation Alternatives Program, the TAP program, Carrie.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. The Transportation Alternatives Program is a biennial program that's meant primarily for bicycle and pedestrian projects, smaller projects. And as of those of you who've been around a while know that we come to you every couple of years and describe these projects to you so that we can get your endorsement, because all of the locality projects that go forth need an endorsement from either the NPO or the board. Slide. Yes. So a review for you. There's $2 million available roughly per district. Each project has a $2.5 million lifetime cap. And this is a reimbursement program, so the locality has to start paying the bills and then get reimbursed. It's a 20% local match. There is a rule, they have to have the project under construction in 4 years. And this is the important part of any project really, but for transportation alternatives, there has to be a logical terminus to your project. Logical termini has to start and end at something that makes sense. So for this round, our project submissions, two FAMPO localities submitted applications, Spotsylvania and Stafford. Spotsylvania has two, Smith Station Road shared use path, gap closure, and Chancellor Park Drive sidewalk. Stafford has Mine Road, Green Spring Drive sidewalk, Chatham Heights, Kings Highway sidewalk, and Borston Woods Drive sidewalk. So 3 sidewalk projects. There is a GWRC locality that also submitted a project, but it doesn't require the FAMPO board's approval. So for Spotsylvania, this is along Smith Station Road, and there's a lot of shared use path going in this area. Spotsylvania Parkway has a nice long shared use path that goes all the way out to Route 1 and then continues over 95 out to the hospital out there. And then it's existing Cortland Park, this development here, also building shared use path by Proffer. They just got this small gap right here. And this is about 1,800 feet, and they would really like to close that gap. So that is their transportation alternatives project submission. And then they also have Chancellor Park Drive sidewalk. That is this blue section right here. This section in green is being proffered by the developer. This is out here here's Harrison Road Elementary, and the Chancellor Middle School. This yellow section is a previous transportation alternatives project that is going to be built. So this is again closing a gap, presumably for the students walking here at school. Moving on to Stafford. Stafford has, as I said, several sidewalk projects. The areas in red are existing sidewalks. We're at Mine Road and Green Spring. And these orange areas are the sidewalks that they want to build, including these crosswalks. And this is a connection between a commercial and residential area. Then we have Borston Woods sidewalk up in North Stafford. And again, you can see the red that is existing and the orange that would be new. So they're just, again, filling in gaps, which is an important part of any pedestrian network. Lastly, Chatham Heights Road. So over here is downtown Fredericksburg, and you're coming across the new Chatham Bridge. And they're trying to provide connection here across Chatham Heights Road, sidewalk, connect with the existing sidewalk. So the next steps, all of these applications need resolutions from this board, and they're due October 2nd. Then validation will occur. VDOT will validate all of these applications and go to the CTE for them in January, and then do their award selections up until April. And that would be a draft. And they'll have a public hearing, funding awarded in next summer. And so this is a whole cycle. It's a 2-year cycle. And the funding will be available in October of next year. This is a very, sorry, I'm having a day today, excuse me. This is a very thorough overview, if you would like to click on this in online, and it will give you all the information you need.
That's good bedtime reading, okay.
Very good bedtime reading. There's lots of graphics though.
Oh, okay.
Lots of pictures for you, Meg.
Yeah, lots of pictures.
In bed with flu.
Anyone have any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Lori.
I have a question. So at the beginning, you said it's $2 million per district.
For Fredericksburg Construction District.
Okay, so
That's
I-
all of us together.
There's all 14 counties in the city of Fredericksburg.
Yeah, so even more than us. But
You ready to arm wrestle?
wow.
Yeah.
So I know that Chancellor project, initially, I think it was 4 million, I believe, wasn't that right, Jake? And then it kind of came down a little bit. So we're all competing for just this $2 million then. Right? Wow, okay. Thank you so much, I appreciate that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Crystal.
Our CTV rep there, she said that the CTV is gonna score them, so.
No, CTV is not that smart.
That's cool.
You're gonna weigh in on how the scores are, so what do you guys take into account when you're?
Well, so OIV scores it, I'm pretty sure, no.
No, Vita scores it.
Give recommendations though.
Based on score.
Right,
Correct.
that's right. That's right.
Not
You
just,
give a recommendation. The scores are provided. I misspoke. Like I said, I've had quite a day today. Forgive me. The scores are provided to the
I've seen
CTV.
it, I need to go to dinner.
I know.
No. Just work with the scores that are provided to her and she's going to give recommendations.
Start blessing sidewalk projects.
That's all that's going to happen.
Okay.
Forgive me for that.
All right, so Marcy, you mentioned there are 14 counties, but those are other projects. FAMPO only gets involved in the ones for the FAMPO reach.
Correct. So all the projects will be scored by VDOT.
That's right.
Those VDOT scores will be provided to the CTV. We then make a recommendation based on the scores objectively, just like Smart Scale, to Laura. And we sit down and we discuss, and then Laura gets to pick the ones for the district.
Well, there you go. Buy Laura lunch. I'm kidding.
saying, help your scores do really well and make your projects and you'll do just fine.
Logical termini.
There you go.
And make it make sense.
Exactly. Make it make sense. Like,
Good.
project needs to stand on its own.
And we typically get, how many did we get last time? District-wide, how many applications did we score?
Not every jurisdiction applies.
Correct. Not every jurisdiction applies,
The
but
jurisdiction will just not send in a budget.
some apply for multiple.
Carol, I know right now between staff and revenue sharing, I've got 20 applications to program, revenue sharing and tax.
Yeah, and I think we had several, I want to say we were pushing 10 last time. $2 million is not a lot of money. So typically only 1 or 2, maybe 3, depending on the prices, get chosen each round, which is every other year. So you can't beat her up too bad. She only has $2 million, and there's usually like a good 10 applications.
And the projects chosen have to be at least 50% funded too.
Yes, there are other rules, yes.
And they just changed the rules. Not our.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this item?
Can I get a quick recap? I had an issue with my calendar that's late, and I just wanted to know real quick what.
So it's TAP projects, which is,
Okay, let's-
they're now called transportation alternative projects.
But everybody's still calling.
Sidewalks.
And it's bike and ped projects, sidewalks and shared use paths. And it's done every second year by the state of Virginia. Our localities submit applications, FAMPO doesn't, but they ask FAMPO to send a resolution of support for the projects. So what we're doing tonight is we've got a presentation on the 5 projects from our localities that have been submitted. And we're passing a resolution of support for those 5 projects from our,
Okay, thank you.
which we do
Sorry, I'm late.
every cycle.
So in Stafford, we have 3 projects, Spotsylvania has 2, and then we will score and I have a feeling we'll hear about these at our September 5th infrastructure meeting, because we're doing a lot of transportation conversation there. So we'll probably hear about them there, and we might have to whittle them down.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, Carrie, on to our favorite subject, smart scale.
I wish we could give you final answers on everything tonight. It's a work in progress because the state has decided in its infinite wisdom that it's time to change some of the rules of smart scale. And so we can tell you a little bit, and our CTB member hopefully will tell you a bit more. And then we just have to wait until the CTB finishes the process, because we don't know.
Or we'll just be confused together. That's what we'll do. So yes, as Ian said, but some things don't change. We still have a timeline. We are in August, so right now, you all should start developing your candidate regional projects for consideration in the pre-scoping project. In September, continue doing so and communicate with VDOT. Begin submitting your projects in October, and by November, your project concepts, at least your concepts, are due. You need to start thinking about what you're going to be putting into the pre-scoping application portal, and then continue to coordinate with VDOT December through April to do your supporting work for your pre-applications. And then March 1st to the 31st, you're going to get your pre-applications in. And that's what I want to really stress to everybody, because the time is now. You're developing your projects right now. And I know that a lot has changed. VDOT is still finalizing its own fall schedule, and there's a lot of unknowns. The CTB July meeting, there were many proposed modifications. There could be many changes for round 6. There may be a change in the number of applications that were allowed. There could be new rules for the high priority funding stream. They may change the land use scoring factor. Many changes could happen. But regardless of all of these unknowns, proceed with developing a preliminary list of regional candidate projects based on your priorities for submission to pre-scoping portal in November. That's it.
Okay, questions and comments for Carrie, and then we'll go into our Laura Sellers. Any questions for Carrie? All right, I specifically asked Ian, and Laura does come and attend a lot of our meetings. Very grateful for that.
Thank you.
But I asked her to come to this meeting and be prepared to address the policy committee on anything that she has at this point in time, if she can share anything with us. I went out and spoke on behalf of FAMPO at the July CTV meeting, sat next to Becky, and she helped me draft my comments. It was great. And pretty much I told the CTV board that, we aren't Hampton Roads, we're not Northern Virginia. And while you look at Spotsylvania and Stafford being, kind of urban areas, you look at all of us in totality, we're very rural in some respects, and that we don't really fit into any of those categories, and that they really, really, really need to, I said, I implore you to have a conversation tomorrow, even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes about this. And so I'll let Laura take it from here, because I think they did have a conversation and they're going to be talking about it a little bit more. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah, I think first, thank you guys for coming to the CTB meeting. It was probably more speakers than we usually have, so that was very helpful for folks to see the jurisdictions come out and speak. That's why we do these meetings out in the districts. We received a lot of compliments, so Marcy and her staff, for what they put together. So it was very helpful for folks to come out, particularly the trails. As I said to the city, I tend to be a little tough on our trails, using transportation money for trails. And so it was really nice to show what trails can do, particularly coming from Fredericksburg, because I can be.
You want to tell them a little bit about where you toured in the region?
Yeah, so, I mean, I would open that up to Marcy, they planned it. But we hosted there at Fred Nat's Park. So that was very nice, you know, and every CTB member commented to me as well as the secretary that it was a great facility. It was different. Usually we're stuffed in a room about this size, in a hotel, and so this was very, very nice for us to get out and to see and to do different things. And then, where did we go? We went and toured the 95 FredEx. And Marcy somehow stopped traffic on a Tuesday afternoon so that we didn't run into any traffic getting to the highway or down the highway. Not sure how that happened, but so we stopped there at the visitor center. We took a picture with the love sign, which we did share on social media. And then we went down and the city gave us an overview of the trail network that's here. The only thing we did not tour that we probably could have added had we had time was what's going on there at the VA hospital. You know, so we did kind of hit the high points of what's going on in Stafford, what the city's investments are, and then did talk to them about the VA hospital there at Massaconix, Posner's Corner, I don't know what it's called, but down there. So we did hit all the big things here in the area. And then at dinner, the Fredericksburg district put together a great video of the Norris Bridge, because you can't come to Fredericksburg without hearing about it. And folks got to see that, with even the comments from the secretary who said, well, clearly this was not taken in a suburban because you can see the rails and it's a lot scarier when you're in a bigger thing. So it was a great time. They really got to see what we have to offer minus the traffic. We did not tour the train station because last summer, going to the governor's conference, we took the train from DC all the way down to Norfolk. So we did not need to really show that. We've already done that. And seeing the projects that are up here, we're pretty familiar with them. And I would encourage anybody to take the train from here to the beach. It is very, very good. So that's what we did.
And then can you share with us what your conversation was the next day, as you all had, I believe, a short conversation about adding additional category?
So we are having a lot of conversations with Smart Scale, we being the CTB, and the majority of the changes that are being proposed right now there are a couple, but where I think this FAMPO needs to be watching is the changes to the high priority projects. FAMPO only qualifies for high priority money. You do not qualify for district grant monies. The localities do, but you guys need to really focus on what changes at the HPP project. So if you look on that spreadsheet that OIP puts out, the very last column, it will say a 2. And to me, that tells me you guys get HPP money. And so any project within that spreadsheet that says 2, or that says FAMPO or GWRC, those are the projects that you're looking at. And what they're trying to do, what's the issue, right, that we're trying to solve, is smaller projects have been getting money through the HPP program that didn't really meet what was envisioned. And so we are now looking at that and making it a little bit harder, not harder, but putting a little bit more criteria on what qualifies. So if we look around here, I'd have to think of some of the projects over the years, but there were projects this time that fell in that HPP category that probably should not have, right? They were smaller projects. They should have been submitted by the localities. The state is trying to weed those out a little bit more. So HPP is going to be impacted. There was conversation about the criteria, the population criteria, and the number. So I believe that is still on there to be discussed. So what is that mid-level thing? I haven't seen what's going to come of that. My seatmate, Mr. Lawson, has asked if we could get the readout ahead. Usually we get it about a week before. So he has asked if we could get Smart Scale a bit earlier. So that was still on the list for OIP to look through.
Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question about what counts as a small project or HPP, regional. I mean, with thinking of in the city, so often we have cross-jurisdictional. Lafayette Boulevard. It's going to go in Spotsylvania County. Is the idea then that each locality then needs to apply for those types of projects? Or do smaller yet cross-jurisdictional projects still count under the HPP criteria?
It would, I mean, it would still count as far if it's cross-jurisdictional, but it's things like, there is a project in Stafford that I'm familiar with that GWRC submitted. Realistically, it should have been submitted by Stafford County. And so what is happening, and it's not just us, but it is throughout the state. I believe it was the Richmond rep who talked about, we're seeing where localities are using the PDC and the MPOs to get around the rules. You know, it's this loophole.
Sure.
And so they're closing the loophole and saying, if it just serves your locality, then you need to make some hard decisions, and they want the HPP project, or I should say we, right? So the CTB will ultimately do this. We want the HPP to be a bigger category.
All right, I guess
Bigger project.
I'm trying to think of that bucket of projects that are cross-jurisdictional, yet maybe not considered big projects.
So I wouldn't get wrapped around the dollar amount.
Okay, that was my question, is does dollar amount matter more than it being cross-jurisdictional?
No, but it needs to have some sort of regional significance. Let me think, regional significance.
The clinic roadway projects, they're only in one jurisdiction, but some of them are quite large.
So, and you can make an argument, right? There's a 995 project that Spotsylvania submitted to add a lane. I think it was between the mall and to Cosner's Corner or Massaponax, somewhere like that, to add a lane. I believe Spotsylvania submitted that. I mean, theoretically, that could be one of your HPP projects, right? That's a bigger project. That's a high priority corridor. It's in VTrans.
We did submit it.
That was you guys, okay. So that would be an example. It's only in Spotsylvania County.
We turned down for funding twice, so I'm not sure we're gonna keep submitting it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
well, there are some changes to scoring, and then my colleagues out of the Hampton Roads area have been talking a lot about land use. So there was a larger discussion about that land use criteria and how do we make it more objective? Because and I don't know if this is perception or what, but there is a perception that that land use category sometimes allows people to score very highly. And so there are discussions around that fifth category of land use of what do we do with it. Haven't seen what the recommendation is yet, but I know there was some discussions. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I mean, I suggested that we look at how FAMPO has put together your land use maps for the region, and try to look at that a little bit.
If I can make just one comment, VDOT has been reminding me that our district has done, how did you say it, Marcy?
I mean, we've done very well in,
The highest, in terms of percentages, one of the arguments
yes,
that people are making.
we had the highest, and we have the highest percentage across the state of projects selected based on the number of applications. We
So
didn't have the highest number of projects, but we had the highest
highest
percentage of
success
projects.
in the
Yeah.
entire state.
We did very well this year. That's why, Spotsylvania County, their entire program got funded, I believe. Have to go look, but
We have to remind them of that for the next 10 years, because they've said for the past 10 years that they don't ever get any projects funded. So your predecessors, I might add,
Pennsylvania has had a very good year for projects.
2023, let's remember that.
But it's a lot easier from seeing all of them come in from the CTB member perspective. It's a lot easier when we can bucket them around, when I could bucket them around, this is what this is for. Like I could clearly pick out what was related to the VA clinic. I could clearly pick out what was related to the VCR trail. And then in Stafford around Leland Station, there's quite a few projects. So that makes it a little bit easier from my perspective, because then if I have to go and lobby, then I can say this is what it's for. It's some of these ones that aren't somehow connected to these bigger concepts. We'll have outliers. those are a little harder to rep, to lobby for.
Okay.
So just keep, if you keep that in mind
Is
too.
there anything else that Ian and FAMPO could do to assist you with moving forward?
Well, I'd love to hear some thoughts on land use and economic development. So what was thrown out there was to take the land use score as it is now and add it to either safety or congestion. You guys remember? Safety or congestion. And so take that score, and instead of it being in its own, it's gonna be just tacked on to one of those two things. I've looked at what that would have done this year to our numbers, and I have an idea of where things would have ended. But I would love to hear what's a better way of doing it.
So
Yes, Ian.
two thoughts. First one is, because we've done so well recently, we don't think the system's broke, right? And if it's not broke, don't fix it, because we will continue to do well. If you fix it, we're going to struggle. So we're not, it's nothing personal. We just think it's doing well. Our district is great with helping us. We're getting good projects approved. If you change it, we're going to struggle a bit more. Secondly, in the interest of transparency, I sit on the board of FAMPO, which is statewide. And over the last 3 weeks, I think it is, FAMPO put out a survey to the technical advisory committees of all of the MPOs and staff of all of the MPOs, and asked us to fill in a survey on what we thought of the new recommendations. And they're collating a joint response to the CTB, a FAMPO response to the CTB. And there are about 3 items which they're not in favor of, and one of the 3 is to change the land use metric. So it seems like there's one MPO down near the beach that's very keen on changing that metric, but the others are not that keen on changing that metric. So I don't know what's going to happen out of that. We'll see. I think that what did happen this time is that the projects that benefit the most from the land use metric seem to be the bike and ped projects. And so there seems to be a perception across the state and at the CTB that too many bike ped projects got funded versus bigger projects, roadway projects and other projects. And so is the land use metric being used appropriately, because it seems to favor the bike ped projects? The counter argument, I think, across the state is that if we go to the other extreme, we may get no bike ped projects funded, because they seem to only score very well on the land use metric. So maybe there's a middle path where we don't go all or nothing on the land use metric. We still need to have some bike ped projects approved, but maybe not as many as have been approved in the last couple of rounds. So there's some wiggle room there. And my final comment is that FAMPO staff, some of us anyway, had a presentation by the folks in Richmond that are involved with smart scale at the VDOT central office. Just how the system works internally, because we knew the surface. Carrie knew more than I did, but we asked for a presentation. And one of the proposals that hasn't been clear to us from the documentation, but which they told us during the training seminar, is that one of the steps that OIP uses to score and allocate the proposed funding solution, they're proposing to remove it. There's a 3-step process. They first do the district grants, there's step 2, and then there's step 3. Step 2 is the step in which they don't look at a cost benefit analysis. They only look at the benefit. That step they're proposing to remove, which means that the cost benefit equation is going to become much more important if the CTB approves that change. What that means in simple English is, if you have an expensive project and you don't put any local match in, you're never going to score on the cost benefit analysis. So it's going to mean that at least a little bit of money is going to have to be put in by the applicant if you want to get it funded. So if that step 2 of the funding system is removed and you have steps 1 and 3 of the current system, benefit analysis is going to be much more important in scoring than it was for HPP projects under the current system. That's the explanation we got. So I don't know if you all will vote for the change, but that's the implication. So what that means for us at FAMPO is if that change is made, we will be looking to localities to put at least some skin in the game in order to help those projects over the finish line. Because when they do the cost benefit analysis, if it costs 20 million and you put in $0, it's going to be hard to win the cost benefit game against projects elsewhere. So those are my only comments. Chair.
Okay. All right, well, I appreciate you coming, Laura. If anybody has comments or more questions for, everybody has her contact information, please feel free to reach out to her. Marcy, and I appreciate you being here tonight.
Yeah, we appreciate
and thank
it.
you for all your efforts.
I'd probably say send it to Marcy.
One of the interesting comments I'll make is I've seen bodies do this a lot of times. And the sad part is something's working really well. And rather than people adopt to the thing that works well, they change the thing to get what they want. I hope CTV keeps the focus on that, which works. As they adjust, I am hopeful they find out what is that middle thing that is working well. But that's just an observation after.
The district grant program's working really well. I think most people feel very comfortable with how the district grant program, it is the HPP process that has a little bit more concern with how things are going. And so that's where they're looking to make some changes. And then in land use, but I will say that anything that I think is going to adversely impact rural or provide support to urban over rural, I will very unlikely support that just because it does put us at a disadvantage as a district. The majority of the district is rural, with the exception of this MPO. We are all rural, and so if it is going to impact the rural areas in that, I'm not likely to support that. But and will, as you know, I have no problem lobbying to get votes if need be. So we see it's an issue, and we're working to fix it. So, but yes, I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. We still don't have all the answers, but once we know.
Thank you for your hard work on what is a volunteer position.
Well, it's interesting. I was here. I was on the MPO when we started it, and I remember as told you guys, we fought it.
Don't you think it's going so well at FAMPO at the moment?
It is. You guys do so much better. Where's all like the back end?
We have it at the back now.
All right, thank you, Laura. Okay, we're going to move on to item D, the TM. Back to Becky.
Well, sorry for bringing up the presentation. We're here today to update you on the status and progress made on the FAMPO travel demand model. DDOT, the traffic engineering consultant, are managing the project with input from staff and the FAMPO jurisdictions. Next slide. Mike will provide a brief explanation of travel demand model, give a definition and description of a traffic or transportation analysis zone, commonly called a TAZ or TAZ. Lastly, we'll describe the data that's being updated and explain why this matters. Next slide. Travel demand modeling uses observed travel behavior to predict future travel patterns and focuses on travel demand generated from land use and economic conditions against the supply capacity of the current or future transportation network. The accuracy of the input data is critical. Tonight's presentation will describe our progress to supply that information and why this is so important. Next slide. A traffic or transportation analysis zone, referred to as a TAZ or TAZ, is a unit of geography used in transportation modeling and varies in size. Generally, the TAZ is large in rural areas and is more dense or smaller in urban areas. The FAMPO travel demand model TAS structure follows the most recent census blocks, and our update cycle follows the 10-year census cycle. Next slide. Input for each TAZ include data that help the model behave like an organism to generate vehicle trips in and out of each traffic analysis zone throughout the day, like blood coursing through arteries and veins. Next slide. The VDOT consultant has analyzed 2020 census data at the TAZ level for population and employment. FAMPO staff provided updates on the supply side. Local partners helped with growth characteristics for each of their traffic analysis zones, and VDOT's ongoing collection of average annual daily traffic comprise the major data elements of this process. Next slide. The update process began in March, and this slide lists some of the work accomplished by FAMPO staff in the early months. Next slide. FAMPO staff computed the in-service date of completed projects using VDOT's expenditure history and documented the anticipated completion dates of active projects. On this slide is a project that I managed when I worked for Spotsylvania County, the Route 3 widening, and the in-service year was 2016. So you see how this is one that's being added to the model now in 2023. So when the models run, we have all this progress since 2016 to now, including those interchange projects that VDOT's completed as well. Next slide. The heavy lift began in April with draft TAS boundary maps shared with localities to review recommended adjustments to the former boundaries to match the 2020 census blocks. Next slide. This slide gives perspective on the detail that our local partners examined to help adjust the TAS boundaries and roads in the model. Next slide. VDOT's modeling and consultant team then did the heavy lift in June to adjust population, household, and employment data to each adjusted and new TAS. Next slide. So why worry about this every 5 to 10 years or so? The FAMPO travel demand model helps predict the impacts of transportation policy and infrastructure improvements, helps with day-to-day operational improvements like intersection traffic timing and corridor congestion management strategies. The model is used by decision makers as you consider large projects of regional significance, and it helps assess the pros and cons of options to meet the needs of communities. Next slide. We'll be sending our transit partners a request for ridership, and the team is looking at September 2022 as our representative time for the information. The updated model allows for new projects to be coded or added into the model once they are completed, such as developer constructed roads. Once the forecasting and documentation is completed, we'll have training, and that's likely to be in the spring of next year. That concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Becky.
Any questions for Becky?
The key thing is the more accurate the model is, the better we can predict the future. So we're renewing the model so that it works even better redundant.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, next we have the vision plan. Connor.
Yeah, we've got 2 items here. Connor, we had a comment from a policy committee member, in fact, Mr. Barudi, who said, you know, you showed us the land use maps that you made. What about the traffic? Can we put that on the map? So what Connor did is created for you a 3D map, which has got your land use map that you've seen, and it's now put the annual average daily traffic.
So what I have up right now is the volume to capacity ratio, but you can also select.
I'm going to switch the lights off so you can see the if you don't mind. But that is a 3D model and it can move. So what I'm going to ask him to do when he's ready is to zoom in and show you where the congestion is the worst in our region according to the model. So there's the land use map. You've seen it. We made it for you. Okay, zoom out a little. A little more. So the vertical purple and red colors is the amount of traffic shown in height. So the higher that line and the more dark color, the more traffic you've got there on, and it's an amount of traffic shown on the amount of roadway available. So basically, the calculation gives you congestion, right? You've got 3 lanes, you've got 1,000 cars, it's 300 cars per lane. It's a division that you do. So when you look at that map, it tells you where the worst congestion is, and the model predicts it. That big purple that you see there is the worst congestion currently in the region. And finally, you use 2020.
It's 2022.
2022 numbers. So guess where that purple is?
17.
That is Route 17. It's the worst congestion in the region.
Then Route 3 is worse.
Garrisonville Road, go to Garrisonville Road.
This one, this will take us to Stafford.
See that purple there? That's Garrisonville Road. See how tall it is and how purple it is? That is a mess. And then if you go further south and look at Route 3, it's the third most. So, what do you know about the 3 worst pieces of congestion in the region when you look at it on a map like that? They're all west of the I-95. And there they are, the purples, the dark purples. It's Garrisonville Road, US 17, and Route 3. And you can move that map around, so you can pick your neighborhood, and we can zoom in and show you what the condition is on your local road.
By the Garrisonville, what's the dark pink road? Nope, keep going with that one.
This one.
That's part of
That
it.
Salton Shop.
See.
See?
That's gotta be Salton Shop.
It can give you that's Quantico, below Quantico.
If I zoom into it, I should be able to click on the segment.
Yeah, if you click on the segment, it gives you the information about that segment.
First of all, this is really cool. Thank you for your
It
work.
is.
Yes.
It's a very cool map. We're hoping if it doesn't use up too much data, we can put it on the website.
That's
Still Garrison.
Oh, that's so good.
That's still Garrisonville right there. You can see the segment, you can see the, see that?
It creates a traffic light every 15 feet.
That's probably a shelter.
I had not thought of doing it this way, but it could be very useful to your staff if they want to show the public how bad it is. It's
Garrisonville.
it's an automated 3D map you can move around in and gives you all the data just like that. It's a really great project, and I want to congratulate Connor, especially on the FAMPO staff, in making this. And I never gave him an instruction to make it.
Way to go, Connor.
Time in between his other projects, and he said, I can do something better with this. Let me try. So, Mr. Barudi, that's the best answer we've come up with so far for your question of what about the traffic? And if you look down into that map, those colors are the land uses we showed you on the map.
Right.
So it's the same. You're looking at the same land use map, but that's what the congestion is on that map.
Okay, Connor, can we go, whoops.
Oh, sorry.
Can you look at, I think it's basically New Post and everybody coming up Route 2. If you blew that up a little bit,
So go to just south of the city center there.
oh, I'm sorry. No, it's up further. Oh, that would be Butler Road. Okay.
Which one did you want?
Yeah, there was one that went,
Also, can you see out there in King George? There's one big intersection in King George in the top right-hand corner of the picture that they're going to have to solve
Not here.
in time.
well, that's the issue that they have, that they're discussing right now, whether or not they allow trucks to go down. Is that Route 206 that goes down to Dahlgren?
Yes, exactly. So that,
Or they push them all the way out to.
that's their one future project. But isn't that a cool map? And you can, if you do it at home, if we can get it on the website, we first need to check how much data it's going to use. But if we can get it on the website, anybody from home will be able to look at, zoom into their local area. This tells you how much congestion you have relative to the guys in the next neighborhood, right? It's a fantastic map, but it's based on 2022 congestion.
Okay. Anybody have questions for Connor?
I do.
Lori?
Can we look at Route 3 and see where it's, I mean, I think I kind of know where it gets congested, but I'd just like to see what the data shows.
Just zoom in there, there you can see it. So point out the I-95
This segment right here will be 95. This, where my cursor is Spotsylvania Town Center,
Okay,
and this is gonna be Central Park. So I believe this should be Salem Church.
Salem Church Road.
Salem Church Road, yeah.
But that doesn't actually get a dark purple at all as you zoom in.
Oh, yeah, someone's fine.
Interesting.
But one of the things that, if I remember what Ian said, is this is also about volume of cars by roadway.
Versus roadway width.
So it's gonna be that volume as opposed to the traffic light hell that occurs with intersections. You may have lots of volume, but nothing moves because it's traffic lighted. So this is a congestion volume, not speed of travel,
So this is Salem Church Road here.
which they're correlated.
This is Gordon Road here. So between Gordon and Salem Church is that section. Between Salem Church and the I-95 is this section here. So those are the worst sections. It immediately drops off to Gordon Road. And you can see Route 2 out here to the Shannon Airport. There's a bit of congestion there. And then down here, Massaphonics area, there's some purples as well.
So on the Route 2, it's just by the Shannon Airport that you're showing the major piece
Until the Shannon Airport.
until,
After the Shannon Airport, if you're going south, it
Interesting.
drops.
Yeah, I'm surprised that that's like that.
because down to New Post, what's happening, and maybe it's not taking, it's taking the whole
With-
time, right? But weekends, it's backed up all the way to 17.
So this is an
Right.
average. Connor, correct me if I'm wrong, this is an average. So it's not, it doesn't do Monday or Tuesday or
Yeah,
Thursday.
this is an average,
Right.
and it also doesn't take into account which direction.
I'm sorry?
Doesn't take into account the directionality. This is a combination of like east and westbound on 3.
So it's an average.
Average.
So it's an average. So there may be 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning, an area is worse than this map. And that's because it's taking an average. It's not looking at a specific time. This is a very useful tool to show people who aren't planners, if you can just explain what the purples mean. In one picture, you can see where the big problems are right now. That's not the future, right? That's right now.
Now, is this available? I mean, I see the URL.
Yeah.
Is it only available with your login? Is that how you were able to create?
I made it public, so if I sent you the link right now, you could use it.
Oh, well, you don't even have to put it up on the website then. I mean, you have a link to it. There's no
We can
spaces
send
for you.
all of you in this room the
Yeah,
link
I can
to
do
that.
But you can just put the link on the website is what I'm saying. If you wanted to make it public, it's not about space, on your website or whether or not your servers can handle it.
I've not seen this anywhere else. This is the first time I've seen this kind of
Oh,
thing done.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can shoot us the link, that would be.
Yeah, I can send this to you.
Great.
Yeah.
So the next question would be, as you look at the population increases that have been projected and land use kind of in tandem, what would these roads look like incrementally in 5 years?
So if you look,
All dark purple.
What's on your zoning document, right?
if you look at the east-west study and the long-range transportation plan, either of those have projected all the way out to 2050. So it has like a 2035 and a 2050 you can look at. So those documents are on the website and you can click on them. It's not a cool 3D map like this.
Well, that's my question is, how do we get to
You want
a
a cool
full
3D
3D map?
Well,
Because a picture tells 1,000.
does.
Does.
It's really-
People are, yes, Matt.
We did this years ago, and I know we've done it updated. We've done an unconstrained based on our comprehensive plans as they stand now. The last time we did it, which was quite a few years ago, we put a number to it. Based on the allocation we would get under a constraint, our normal constrained plan and what we can expect versus unconstrained to maintain, not improve, maintain the current level of traffic based on our current comprehensive plans, we need another $10 billion in funding.
Those
And that was a few years ago.
Those are the kinds of numbers that are in the CLRP. I don't think people realize that our CLRP is, I don't know how many, but I haven't memorized it, but it's a massive.
It's a massive task. We cannot provide transportation infrastructure based on our current comprehensive plans for this region.
And
Can't do
our
it.
current transportation network and modes of transportation. So
So tomorrow morning, we will send you this on a link.
So this is nothing new.
So, real quick question about the.
Yes, Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the land use colors, so you coded it according to the codes that you had created, so when that tabletop exercise?
We took all of the jurisdictions' current zonings and we merged them so that we
Right.
made rural the same for everybody.
Okay.
So that's what those greens are.
Okay.
Those maps that you.
Okay, it is the same as those.
It's the same map,
Okay.
but it's
Now, if we were to, you can click on any parcel you want. I'm kind of indifferent. Just to see what kind of comes up. What are the yellow
Click
ones?
on one of the green
Oh,
yellow boxes.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be like suburban, but it's gonna show up for all of it.
So there you see, you've got on the map the zoning for you, and that's the zoning that your jurisdiction has picked for that lot.
It also pull up the legend here so that you'll be able to see like, okay, oh, this is rural residential. This is suburban. You also are able to just say you don't want to look at traffic. I can turn that off.
And then you can see the zonings.
See the zones. And so I could zoom into like Spotsylvania Town Center and you'll see that. Right. And then that will correspond to what like the area is zoned as. Right.
I'll need to quit building.
We have worse traffic and we have the rural.
It's the development pattern. It's putting everything on arterials and then having pipe stem neighborhoods afterwards.
I think this is the kind of thing that Congress has in mind when they tell us we must try to link land use with transportation. So this is what we're trying to do, and we hope your planning commissions will look at this and go, okay, maybe we mustn't put more on Garrisonville Road because it just,
Mine says shut it down.
you know,
Don't want.
we can't stop the growth. That was the point that I was showing you earlier about how the growth has actually increased here since COVID. And by growth, I mean people. And every person that moves here comes with one car or two cars or whatever.
Minimum.
So, and they're coming, boy. They are coming in big numbers.
We've held on to one cars with them for a really long time now.
Oh, okay.
Doing our best. Work from home is keeping that healthy.
All right. Chair, I think we should move on.
Okay,
but
let's
we
move
will
on.
make this available to you via a link. So we weren't going to send you the whole thing. We're going to send you the link so you can click on it and view it yourself.
Perfect, but you will also put it on the FAMPO.
We're going to just first work out how much data it's going to use because we pay for the data and we have got a limit. So
Okay,
we might,
that was my question is yeah, like if we keep all playing with it, we're charging FAMPO.
there's a person.
We're working that out with Esri. We'll get back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Let's.
We're trying to get a bigger package with.
Got it.
So that we can.
Okay,
So
we'll
are
come
you-
back to that.
Really quickly, then don't put it on your social media or like share it because then obviously that's.
Yeah, don't put it.
It should just be a link.
For you to use, or maybe the staff of your jurisdiction, it's fine, but don't send it to the entire universe because it might cost us inadvertently.
Right now. Isn't it currently on the Esri website?
Yeah, so I think what the issue is I have the data stored on Esri and like for us to have stuff stored in their cloud, technically, they charge us a certain amount of credits and then like that's how much we pay.
We're not taking up their data. You've already.
I don't think usage would.
We're just accessing the app that you built through the data.
Yeah.
This is
So we'll
we'll
resolve all of that for you. For now, we'll send it to you. Please use it. Please give it to the staff of your jurisdictions. If VDOT wants to use it, please feel free to use it.
And if you have any questions, call Jason. That's the very.
I have questions with Esri's business model if what Ian says is true.
Okay. All right, you'll be our resource there. Okay.
Units, but we'll work.
Let's move on to future funding options for transportation projects. Did we kind of already cover that?
So all that I'm asking here, and if we're time constrained, I don't need to go through this laboriously. But the point that I think we need to get is that I've been emphasizing for a couple of months is there is an increasing emphasis on local match being needed for large projects and even smaller projects. And smart scale is going that way too now, so that if you don't put in some of your own money, you're going to struggle to have that cost benefit analysis win. So there's a slow creeping kind of buying the pot thing going on here, right? If you want to get the 80% of the money, you've got to put in 20% locally. So where do we get the 20%? Because it constrains the number of projects you can work on, and you can see that the population is not going to stop coming. So you can't give up and play dead, because it'll just get worse. And so what I'm suggesting, and I'm asking you as the policy committee, is to, in September, set aside an hour or maybe 2 hours to meet. I think George County has asked if they could also join, and I'm assuming Caroline will as well, to have either a 1 hour workshop or hour and a half workshop, or call it a subcommittee if you want to. I don't care how you cut the cake, but just to talk about future funding. We've talked about having a vision, we've talked about having priorities, we've talked about projects. How are we going to fund the future, right? And so I'm suggesting, please skip over a couple of slides, that we talk about, go on back, that red thing at the bottom. How do we fund the projects that we think are necessary? And it's up to you to decide which ones are necessary. But I'm saying, if you come to me with a list of 4 really big projects that you want to actually construct, I have to, working with VDOT and DRPT and everybody else, try and find ways we can find the money. Or the localities, maybe the localities have to find the money. But how are we going to fund it? Next slide. So there are all kinds of funding, federal grants and allocations. There are state grants and allocations. There are some regional things. But when you have to look for the match, where are you going to get it? Are you going to keep issuing municipal or local bonds to get the match? Are you going to fund it out of your current CIPs or your current income?
Right.
Are you going to fund? And one of the things that's been spoken about is that also a regional transportation authority. How are we going to do this? And I think to do it in a policy committee, it's hard to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours in a regular policy committee.
Right.
So I'm suggesting we get together. And the final thing I want to say, and then I'll shut up, just go on further. Next one. We are working with the FRA to give you a projected analysis of how much funding an RTA might be able to bring in this region. And we've looked at the examples of Hampton Roads, Richmond, Northern Virginia, and even some of the proposals we've been thrust, well, that's been thrust on us by delegates and representatives in the Virginia legislature, so that we can have a conversation before we get to December, when the new crop of politicians comes up with a whole new bunch of proposals, and then everyone calls me and says, what are we going to do? Well, I don't want to get there. I'd like to have a proper conversation with data, an analysis, and then you can think through the options and give us some guidance as to how we should deal with it, and perhaps talk to your localities. I'm suggesting just a one-off.
Okay, so the question would be, what's the wish of the policy committee? Do you want to have it as an add-on to our meeting? Hopefully we can maybe keep the meeting, that's on me, a little bit shorter next time, but we had really great conversation today on some things. Or do you want to have it at a different time with Caroline and King George?
Yeah, King George asked if they can participate.
We'd just rather add it, our next meeting is supposed to be at 6. So can't we just,
Tack it on at 7 o'clock?
yeah.
Is that the will?
Can we actually hold it to an hour? I mean like the regular meeting to an hour?
Well, yeah, we'll, yes, we will. And if we, I'll tell you we will, and then, if we don't get through things, we'll move into the next meeting.
I think this needs to be a priority.
Yeah, I think it does.
It really does. This is important.
Okay, what we can try to do, Madam Chair, is put things that need big discussion onto the October meeting and not the September meeting.
That would be helpful.
Keep the
We can
September
work on
meeting
that.
to the
Okay.
essentials.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
All right,
So should I invite King George and Caroline
yes.
to attend?
Is anybody
FAMPO
opposed
meeting?
to that? Nope, okay, great.
I'll invite them, thank you.
Okay, moving on to CMAC and S2BG, which we've kind of already heard about, but we are gonna go to you, John.
Thank you.
So I'll give you a quick background. The CMAC STBG methodology was last updated in 2022. It's gone through 2 rounds. This last round, staff kind of from the submitting jurisdictions and FAMPO said this could be going a little bit better. It's kind of walking like a baby giraffe. So what we're proposing in these methodologies is a major refinement rather than tossing out everything. Because as Bob said, you keep what's working well, and that's what we're trying to do. So what's going on with the methodology, the who, the what, and the where are basically staying the same. The when is changing a little bit with that 2-year cadence to align with Smart Scale. We actually did that in the previous round of CMAC STB methodology, so it's not uncommon. It'll just be something that we come to the policy committee in the fall to ask to park the money for a year while we wait for our 2-year cycle. Major changes in the projects are come more from an organizational standpoint. We're refining the metrics. Like in this methodology, it was actually harder to screen in for the project than it was to score in the project. So we're making refinements like that. One of the items that we are making it into bigger change is that we're reducing the emphasis on the air quality toolkits for CMAC. Per the feds, we have to show an air quality benefit, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be 40% of the score. We're actually slowly walking that back down to 10. We're also refining our scaling. So in some categories in the last round, we had almost no projects meeting the scoring criteria of that project. In other ones, they had like everybody scored 10. It kind of has a hard time separating. So we're actually going to be scoring all the projects against the top scoring project in kind of a mathematical equation that is based on that. So if you're the best safety project, you get 10 points. If you have projects that are like Route 3, 17 Garrisonville Road, all fighting congestion, they're going to score similar. But if you're doing 95 in Wicklow Drive in Fredericksburg, you see a bigger difference. We're coming to the kind of the scopes. And then finally, we're making a change to how existing projects come back to us for additional money. So in the previous methodology, the unfunded project, previous round, we cut to the head of the line. We're saying, okay, wait, you can get up to 10% of that money, but if you're coming back, if we funded you $100,000 last year and you saw asking for 10 million, you got to put your name back in the hat and compete against the new crop project. So it wouldn't be an automatic just score to get in, and then you get funding through kind of a methodological book afterwards. Then finally, in some of the more minor changes, we're getting a little bit more procedural and collaboration requirements. This was coming out from the transit providers. And we're being a little bit more specific on the data sources and been working with VDOT to try to pare down the cost estimates, because we had a couple of scenarios where, depending on which data was used, we have the same methodology, but all 3 jurisdictions actually submitted it in a slightly different way. And we're just trying to say, okay, no, we should look at things in a little bit more narrow focus. So this is just the informational. If you really want some great bedtime reading, both of the 2 methodologies are linked in the agenda packet. It's not as cool as Connor Maps. That'll keep you awake. Work very well. Each methodology is actually somewhat based on each other, so you can get a pretty good idea from one from the other, but there are some differences between the 2.
And I would just thank John. He's had to work with all of your jurisdictional staff, and all of them want different things, and he's had to try and accommodate everybody's wishes, and it's compromise and arguing, and it's difficult, right? So I just want to thank him personally for the hours and hours and hours of work, days of typing and fielding criticism and comments and all that. It's been a heavy lift, but it is a better project because it cuts out some of the loopholes. That's just the goal here. Get rid of the loopholes so somebody can't as easily buy the pot, or find a little loophole to get their project to jump ahead. The more objective and academic the scoring is, the better the result is. When it's he said, she said, and midnight meetings, it's all bad, right? 2 things to bear in mind. The one is ultimately you all vote for whether you're going to accept the outcome each round, right? So if we follow the methodology and you think a particular project has been put too low on the list, it's always your decision to decide whether to bump up the project if you think it's been badly treated. That is your political ability. And the second thing is, the methodology that we're currently operating under instructs us to open the call for projects at the TAC meeting in September each year. So we would like to proceed with that and open the call for projects at the TAC meeting in September this year. And then the program will follow its plan as per the methodology. You will then get to vote on this new methodology or revised methodology, say that at your September meeting. And we, in the methodology, allow 10 weeks for each locality to submit their projects, and we then begin to score them. It's a long process because it's based on objective data. We have to collect the data, we have to run all these systems to get a score and produce the score. So that's why it takes us such a long time. And that's why we start in September, even though we only get money soon. When? April. When are you going to give us money? April-ish?
I'm working it through this round.
But by then we have given you the scores, so you know which projects are the better projects and which are going to get the money, and then we wait and see how much money we've got, and then we allocate it. We won't do this next year because we're going to follow a 2-year cycle if you're happy with that.
And it also kind of sets up a lot of the CMAQ and STDG fund is sometimes leveraged for other funding projects, so knowing that ahead of time rather than through the application process.
Hey, any questions for John?
It's not for approval tonight.
Right, we'll
Except,
see you in September.
except, are you happy for me to continue with the call for projects?
Anybody opposed? Okay, there's your answer.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. All right, correspondence. Do we have any correspondence, Ian?
There is on the agenda, if you click on the link, I think there is one item under correspondence. Was it 2? But here, I can't recall. 3. Okay. Well, the express lanes, thank you for those who couldn't make it. The governor officially cut the ribbon and opened the express lanes, and we're very excited. In spite of, I keep teasing BDOT and saying, what's everyone complaining about? We've solved the problems now. The lanes are all open. But of course, as you know,
yeah,
everything has a cycle. So thank goodness we've got these lanes. We're very grateful to have the new bridges, which are not tolled. They're built without tax money. And then we've got the express lanes, which are now open, and we think that that's a step in the right direction. So that's great. Next slide. That's the UPWP. It's now had federal approval. There's the letter saying our UPWP is approved by the federal government to say that we ticked all the boxes and did everything we should. Next
Great.
one. There's a final one.
Go on to the next report.
Okay, that's if I'm correct, that's the DC federal.
Yeah.
That's the DC federal. Yes, there's Cunty. So FAMPO participates in the federal review every year of the TPB. The TPB is the Transportation Planning Board of Washington, DC. And you know that North Stafford is connected to the Washington, DC metro area. Because of that, FAMPO participates with the review of the DC MPO, our equivalent in DC. We participate in the federal review. And the Federal Transit Authority and the Federal Highway Authority take turns in reviewing the DC metro. And we get sort of reviewed with them. And I have to say, they paid us a compliment this time. The Federal Transit Authority said, we like what you're doing on your website. We can find your UPWP. We can find your congestion management process, which Becky does to monitor congestion in our region. We can find it on your website. We like what you're doing. So that was great. I ended up having to defend the TPB because the feds wanted to know from them, from DC, why they are not forcing the DC metro train system, the subway system, from dealing with their fiscal cliff. In about 18 months, they're going to need $750 million to just survive financially, and there isn't a plan to fix it. And so they were trying to force our counterpart in DC to force the train people to fix their fiscal cliff. And the TPB said to the federal authority, we don't have the legal right to do that. We're an MPO. Right. We can put their things in our tip, and we can refuse to put things in our tip, but we can't tell them where to get their money from. It would be like FAMPO saying to Fred Transit, no. we're going to tell you to have a different financial plan because we don't like your financial plan and it doesn't work for us. It would be ridiculous. So I ended up defending our counterparts in DC against the federal authorities who were reviewing them because it's a high ask, right? We have no authority as MPOs to dictate to local, regional, and federal transportation bodies how to fund themselves.
Right.
We don't have that right. And I think, in my view, the federal authority was a little bit overstepping what should have been done. So we're on a good foot with the DC counterparts because they like the fact that we help them with their federal review. And there's the letter saying that the federal review is approved and they're very happy with what they found.
I think you scroll along this report.
So it's in your pack, which was emailed out to you, but the report of the federal review is there available. And there are a couple of things they needed to work
So
on.
you're more than happy to help yourself and read that, and great job, staff, seriously. No, that's good that FAMPO got a good review, and appreciate all your efforts there. Okay, do we have any other staff and agency reports?
Nothing from us, Chair.
Anything?
I'll just say we had our new service change, and quite frankly, it's the best service change we've had in over a year. So there's been a change in operational leadership and results. For those elected officials, gotten the complaints about our on-time performance, our missed trips, et cetera. That has been heavily resolved, and we're thrilled by the.
Great.
Great.
Glad to hear that. Anything else, VDOT? No? Okay. Board member and chair comments. I have no comments. Any board member comments? Matt?
Building on what Bob just said, and some of the what we've seen here tonight, would it be possible, and FAMPO staff could kind of oversee this, that we keep coming back and forth to transit, and we've really not focused a lot of time and effort into it. We've now got OmniRide running down the 95 corridor in our territory. We've got Fred running. And over the years, every time we start conversations on transit, it gets into a bunch of dicey little issues. I'd like to have, Bob and Jamie and FAMPO staff spend some time looking at where we are now with transit and maybe do some work on what the future of transit could look like with those organizations in the future. Kind of be able to bring something back to us that can really start a serious conversation of what transit's going to be like. I don't think we're in a position as a board yet to have that conversation. I think it's going to take the people who know a lot more about it to kind of put some ideas together on paper to bring forward so we have something to talk about. Does anybody have an issue with us starting down that road?
I would say based on the report that we just saw, the visual, we would be remiss to our constituents if we didn't look at that.
So, Dean, would it be possible maybe, obviously it's not going to happen overnight, but at least come back in a meeting or two and just say, here's the general outline of what we're going to try to do. This is when we think we can bring something back to you after you have, Jay and Bob have some conversations with me better.
I'm happy to have the conversations and give you some thoughts. I'm also meeting with some of the DRPT people in Richmond just to, touch base with them. I don't know if they have any great ideas.
From DRPT, so, all right, anybody opposed?
No.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
I'll
great
start some
suggestions, thank you.
And I think that dovetails nicely along with some other things. At our last board meeting, we had our TDM strategic or CAP-SP, Commuter Assistance Plan, strategic plan. Some of the OmniRide staff is coming down later this week, I believe, or early next week to meet with Ian and some staff to go over some of those items just so they can see what we've done in terms of our commuter assistance program and how that dovetails. So I think we're starting to see more and more cross-germination, and this might be the time to have that conversation.
Great, all right, thank you. Any other board members like to make any comments?
Oh,
Yes,
Chair,
Lori.
first of all, I just want to thank you for your comments at the transportation board meeting because they were, for anybody who wasn't there, they were fantastic. You did a phenomenal job representing FAMPO. And
Thank you, Becky.
I didn't know you got the school there, but you did a great job. So I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, our next meeting is September 18th at 6 o'clock. And
we're gonna do the workshop at the same meeting.
yes, but we're gonna limit our meeting to 1 hour. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you for indulging with this.